This is a scan of my first child, due to come into the world in just over 4 months. It was this picture that finally pushed me to do something about protecting my apartment from pollution, a bullet point that had been on my to-do list since I first moved to Beijing 3 years ago. I started with a visit to Dr. Richard St. Cyr, or Dr. Richard as he is known in the hospital where he works. Dr. Richard runs a website with health advice to foreigners living in Beijing, and a Google search revealed also one of the most quoted experts in matters of air quality related health. I started by asking him to outline what the risks were to me and what measures could be taken to mitigate them.
Well, to start, I think you'd have to have a baseline of the evidence, I suppose. And for example, the World Health Organization recommends an annual AQI level of under 20 would be the safest level. And of course, the average in Beijing is at least 100. So it's much higher than the studies suggest. So in fact, the studies suggest there is a very dose-related increase in health effects after an AQI of even 12, 13. So definitely something is happening to everyone's health at any level above that, which is why the World Health Organization and the EPA, all those organizations make these recommendations. And of course, the main issue, of course, is lung diseases and heart diseases. It's heart disease. Many people don't realize that, but you know, like an AQI are certainly over 200 in Beijing, which isn't uncommon. I personally think something like a mask isn't a bad idea. The other big thing that most people talk about is like air filters inside. I think anyone who lives in China for more than a couple years should really think about, at the very least, having an air purifier in their bedroom. You know, 1/3 of your life is when you're sleeping, right? So, and 90% of our time is indoors, lifetime. So people always worry about the outdoor air pollution, but don't forget, most of your time is indoors.
When I quizzed Dr. Richard about the risk to the baby, he started by making the point that tens of millions of children grow up all over China in polluted cities and don't develop problems. It's a complex issue, he told me. However, his advice...
What I usually quote is to concerned parents all the time is there's especially a study from Los Angeles, this is called the USC Children's Health Study, which followed children from 4th to 12th grade in smoggy Los Angeles, which isn't even half the pollution levels of Beijing, by the way. But there was a statistically significant decrease in lung function in the kids that lived in the neighborhoods that were more polluted than the kids in the cleaner areas. And that decrease in lung function persisted when they followed up with the same kids at 18 years old. There is something going on in a child's lungs. I do worry more about the developing child than an adult whose lungs are already formed. So there could be permanent damage. It's still not exactly clear how that translates into the future, but there is something statistically significant about that. So I do worry about that. I do recommend that parents, at the very least, put a good air purifier in their child's bedroom or where the child's going to be.
So after getting home, I googled Beijing air purifiers, found the Tirana Clean Air Centre and booked an appointment for an expert to visit my apartment in the afternoon. Just after 2 p.m, Chris Buckley, an Englishman with a PhD in chemical engineering from Oxford, turned up with an assistant and a digital air meter.
Yes, so what I'm going to do now is check the outside air.
He started with taking readings outside and then went up into my apartment for more readings in the living room and my bedroom where the baby will live. I showed him my air quality phone app and asked Chris how the readings on the app compared to the air that I was breathing in the apartment.
But the numbers I'm getting here, and based on past experience, those are pretty much in line with what you're seeing there. So it looks like it's around about 150 on the embassy scale.
Outside or inside?
Outside is about 20% higher, but there's not that much difference.
So basically, by coming indoors, I'm not...
You haven't actually added very much protection. So for example, in the finest size range, we had 200,000. And indoors, we've got 167,000. And then this size range was, similar difference. So it's a little bit better indoors, but not that much.
Right.
The final total, 8,000 RMB for 2 top-quality air purifiers, powerful enough to reduce the pollution present in my apartment by a claimed 90%. Clean air does not come cheap in Beijing. Oh, and just in case anyone watching thought bad air was a good excuse not to exercise, Dr. Richard had one last bit of advice.
Yeah, I think in terms of biking, my main point of that is don't stop biking and don't stop jogging. The benefits of exercising, even outside, and possibly even outside on the bad days, is still much, much greater than the risks of pollution. The relative risks and the relative benefits, if you look at the statistics, it's still much better cardiovascular benefits if you're jogging. So please don't use pollution as an excuse to not exercise. So that's the key message I try to give people.
This is DJ Clark in Beijing for China Daily.